Yeah, we all know that the first sign that someone has a crush on you is eye contact. But what happens when the object of your secret love is blind? Let's navigate Anne's story together. The sun is setting over a bustling city. The condominium is an oasis of calm amidst the chaos, with its sleek architecture and meticulously maintained gardens. Residents come and go, exchanging polite nods and smiles, but for Anne, each day is a new opportunity to connect with John. Anne first noticed John in the building's lobby. He was standing by the elevator, cane in hand, with an air of quiet confidence. She was immediately drawn to him, not just because of his striking features, but because of the way he navigated the world with grace and determination. On that day, Anne was wearing her favorite perfume, a floral scent that lingered in the air long after she had passed by. John smiled as she walked by, a subtle acknowledgement of her presence that sent her heart racing. Over the weeks, Anne and John began to naturally cross paths more often. She made sure to wear the same perfume every day, creating an olfactory signature that John could easily recognize. Their encounters became a comforting part of her routine. In the elevator, surrounded by the hum of everyday life, Anne and John shared quiet moments. Sometimes other people were in the elevator with them. John would greet others politely but would always say, "Good evening, Anne," his voice warm and familiar when she entered, proving he recognized her perfume. She would smile, her heart fluttering, and reply, "Good evening, John." One evening, after a particularly long day, Anne found herself alone in the building's communal garden. The gentle rustle of leaves and the soft chirping of crickets created a serene atmosphere. She sat on a bench, breathing in the cool night air, lost in her thoughts. Suddenly, she heard the familiar tap of John's cane on the pavement. He approached her bench, his steps sure and steady. "Mind if I join you?" he asked, his voice breaking the silence. Anne's heart skipped a beat as she replied, "Not at all." They sat together, the night enveloping them in its quiet embrace. Anne's perfume mingled with the scent of blooming flowers, creating an intimate cocoon. "You always smell so nice," John said softly, turning his face towards her. "It's comforting." Anne blushed, grateful for the darkness that hid her flushed cheeks. "Thank you," she whispered softly. "I'm glad you like it." As the weeks went by, Anne and John's interactions grew longer and more meaningful. They found themselves spending more time together in the garden, sharing stories about their lives, their dreams, and their fears. John was captivated by Anne's voice and her genuine kindness, while Anne admired John's strength and his optimistic outlook on life despite his blindness. One evening, John shared a deeply personal story about how he lost his sight, but gained a new perspective on life. Anne listened intently, her admiration for him growing with each word. "You've been through so much, John," she said, her voice filled with empathy. "And yet you're one of the strongest people I know." John smiled, his face softening with gratitude. "Thank you, Anne. Your support means the world to me." Anne returned his smile, feeling a warm connection growing between them. "I'm always here for you, John," she replied, her voice gentle and reassuring. From that moment on, their relationship blossomed. They spent evenings talking in the garden, mornings sharing coffee, and countless moments simply enjoying each other's company. They started exploring the city together, John guiding Anne through his favorite spots based on their sounds and smells. They attended concerts, visited parks, and even took a cooking class together, laughing and bonding over their shared experiences. Each day brought them closer, their connection growing stronger with every passing moment. One rainy evening, Anne was hurrying home from work, her mind preoccupied with thoughts of John. She had a small gift for him, a book of poetry she thought he would enjoy. As she entered the lobby, she noticed John standing by the elevator, looking slightly disoriented. "John, are you okay?" she asked, concern evident in her voice. He turned towards her, his expression troubled. I think I lost my way for a moment," he admitted. "It happens sometimes when I'm distracted." Anne felt a pang of worry. "Let me help you," she said, taking his arm gently and guiding him to the elevator. Once inside, she pressed the button for their floor, trying to hide her anxiety. As the elevator doors closed, John sighed. "It's been a tough day," he confessed. "Sometimes I feel like I'm a burden to those around me." Anne's heart ached at his words. "John, you're not a burden," she said firmly. "You're one of the strongest people I know." They arrived at their floor, and as they stepped out of the elevator, they were greeted by a loud crash. A maintenance worker had accidentally knocked over a cart of supplies, creating an obstacle in the hallway. John tensed, clearly frustrated. "I hate feeling helpless," he muttered. Anne squeezed his arm reassuringly. "We'll get through this together," she said. "Let's take it slow." Guiding John carefully around the mess, Anne felt a new determination to be there for him. But as they approached their apartments, John suddenly pulled away. "Anne, I need to be alone tonight," he said quietly. "I appreciate your help, but I need to sort things out on my own." Her heart sank, but she nodded, understanding his need for space. "Of course, John. If you need anything, you know where to find me." He gave her a faint smile before retreating into his apartment, leaving Anne standing in the hallway, the gift still clutched in her hand. She couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted between them, and she wondered if their comfortable routine would ever be the same again. The next day, Anne decided to check on John. She knocked on his door and he invited her in, his demeanor more relaxed. They spent the afternoon talking and laughing, the tension from the previous night seemingly gone. As they were enjoying a cup of tea, the doorbell rang. John frowned, clearly not expecting anyone. "I'll get it," Anne offered, getting up to answer the door. When she opened it, a striking woman stood there, looking slightly annoyed. "Is John here?" she asked, peering over Anne's shoulder. Anne nodded, feeling a pang of unease. "Yes, he's inside, and you are?" "I'm Claire, his ex-fiancée," the woman replied smoothly, stepping past Anne and into the apartment. Anne stood there, stunned. "Ex-fiancée?" She turned to see John's face pale. "Claire, what are you doing here?" he asked, his voice tense. "I came to see you, John," Claire said, her tone dripping with insincerity. "It's been too long. I've missed you." Anne watched as Claire walked up to John and touched his arm. "I see you found someone new to entertain you," she said, casting a glance back at Anne. "Does she know about all the others?" John's expression hardened. "Claire, that's enough. We have nothing to discuss." "Oh, but we do," Claire insisted, her eyes cold. "You left me without any explanation. You owe me at least that." Anne felt a wave of confusion and doubt. Others? What was Claire talking about? She could feel the cracks forming in the trust she had built with John. "I left because you abandoned me when I needed you the most," John said quietly, his voice filled with pain. "You couldn't handle my blindness, and I couldn't handle your betrayal." Claire's laugh was bitter. "You always did know how to play the victim, John." Anne couldn't take it anymore. She felt out of place and decided to leave them to sort things out. "I'll leave you two to talk," she said softly, stepping towards the door. Before she could exit, Claire's voice stopped her. "Just so you know, Anne, people like John always have secrets. Are you sure you know him as well as you think?" Anne glanced back at John, who looked stricken. "Please don't believe her," he said, his voice almost pleading. "Claire is just trying to cause trouble." Anne nodded but couldn't shake the seed of doubt that had been planted. "I need some time to think," she said quietly before stepping out of the apartment. Over the next few days, Anne found herself replaying Claire's words in her mind. Was John really hiding something? Their once comforting routine now felt clouded with uncertainty. Despite her doubts, Anne missed their interactions and the connection they shared. She decided to focus on what she knew to be true about John, their conversations, his kindness, and the way he made her feel. One evening, as Anne sat in the communal garden lost in thought, she heard John's familiar footsteps approaching. She looked up to see him standing there, looking hesitant. "May I sit with you?" he asked softly. Anne nodded, and John took a seat beside her. For a moment, they sat in silence, the weight of recent events hanging between them. "Anne, I want to be honest with you," John began, his voice steady. "Claire and I were engaged before my accident. When I lost my sight, she couldn't handle it and left. Her showing up now is just her way of dealing with her own regrets." Anne listened, her heart softening as she heard the pain in his voice. "John, I don't know what to believe," she admitted, "but I do know that I care about you." John reached out, his hand hovering uncertainly in the air. Anne gently took it, squeezing reassuringly. "I care about you too, Anne," he said. "I don't want Claire's lies to come between us." Anne took a deep breath, deciding to trust her instincts and the bond they had built. "Let's take things one day at a time," she suggested. "We'll figure this out together." John smiled, relief washing over his face. "I would like that very much," he said. With the tension of Claire's visit behind them, Anne and John focused on rebuilding their routine. They continued to share quiet moments in the elevator, comforting conversations in the garden, and now, tentative steps toward a deeper relationship. As they spent more time together, Anne found herself falling even more for John. She admired his strength and resilience, and he appreciated her unwavering support and kindness. One evening, as they walked through the garden, John turned to Anne, his expression earnest. "Anne, I don't want to let fear or doubt hold us back. Will you be my girlfriend?" Anne's heart soared. "Yes, John, I will," she replied, her voice filled with joy. Their relationship blossomed from that moment on. They supported each other through challenges and celebrated each other's successes. Anne and John's love story was a testament to the power of connection, trust, and the belief that true love can overcome any obstacle. In the quiet corridors of a condominium, the scent of love lingered, a beautiful reminder that sometimes the most profound connections are the ones we cannot see. May you all have the blessing of a true love.